We certainly expect that the face of globalization will change, and the first manifestation of this will be changes to the supply chains. There will be geographic changes to the supply chains as the dial shifts from cost optimization to building in resilience. We have seen during this pandemic that supply chains that have been optimized to lower cost work like magic as long as all parts of the chain work like clockwork. But if there is a shock, the system breaks down. So I expect firms to build in redundancy, to find new suppliers, to move away from just in time towards just in case. And this may mean that some of the production will be brought back to advanced economies. And this will be possible thanks to automation, because automation means that labor costs play a less important role. But of course, it also means that this reshoring will not result in lots of jobs in advanced economies.
You bring up the pivotal role of China here, because much of the dialogue and commentary so far suggests that countries will correct that trade relationship with China, bring more product and more production back to their own countries. But what we've seen in recent days, China also pushing back against some of the inquiries into the pandemic, with the likes of Australia, one country that's been hard hitting in terms of asking questions around the pandemic. There's been reporting that the Chinese are not taking phone calls from Australia at this point. Do you think the Chinese could also push back against other nations if too many questions are asked?
Well, the fact that the international relations between countries are breaking down does not augur very well for globalization. We were already concerned about globalization being rolled back during the financial crisis. But back then, G20 took a very strong stance and expressed commitment to free trade. We are missing this international leadership now, and as relationships between countries deteriorate, there is a danger that we will have escalation of trade tensions and another trade war.
Beata, of course, this is not a free lunch, as you're pointing out. The onshoring movement itself does raise then some flags around who you sell those products to ultimately. If you are taking the work away from those countries, why should they buy your finished goods? It might work for an economy like the United States, which has such a large domestic demand component. But what about an open and free trading economy like the UK, which could be quite badly affected by countries taking reciprocal trade sanctions against them in the face of a re-onshoring movement?
Indeed, UK very much depends on international trade. And now, in particular, given the Brexit negotiations, should those break down, the UK would want to trade on WTO terms with the rest of the world. So it is in the interest of the UK to preserve the global trading rules. And what has been very worrisome during this pandemic is countries engaging in export restrictions on PPE, export restrictions on food. Many emerging markets that saw their currencies become weaker have restricted exports of agricultural products. And the concern is that countries will use these restrictions to justify protectionism and the need for self-reliance. And they will be able to introduce duties to protect their markets. And this will be possible even under the WTO rules, because the WTO rules allow for protecting your own market against subsidized imports. But now that pretty much every government is supporting their own firms, it will be very easy to make a case that imports that are coming in are subsidized. So in the absence of strong international commitment, we may just sleepwalk into protectionism and sleepwalk into rolling back globalization.